as ever, is Lydden Circuit in Kent then for a mammoth 8-race programme of MZs here. And 7 of those races, I can tell you, will feature the top runners, as does this first race up on the grid now. Well, courtesy of some problems earlier in the year, that's why we've got such a packed programme of MZ races here for you this final Bemsey weekend here at Lydden. And this one, a round held over from the April meeting at Lydden, counting towards the championship. The red flag race at the front then, we're now looking towards the lights and waiting for the red lights to go out for the riders to get underway, and they do so now. The sprint from the line begins, and we're looking for man at the moment, Matt Goldsmith, and Chris Rogers likely to be a top contender here. He always goes well at this Kent track. And Phil Bellinkin, it looked like, in third position there as they went around to Chesson's Drift section for the first time. Well, who is that out in front? It's a pretty good lead, and it is Matt Goldsmith, and that's Paul Cundy in second place. Well, Paul Cundy got a flyer off the line. He's up there in second place, and ever improving Paul Cundy, going very well indeed this season. Camera pans forward then, and they all sort themselves out, but it's the number 4 machine of Matt Goldsmith that heads them round North Bend Hairpin for the first time. Now, where's his arch rival Rogers? It's still Paul Cundy in second. Third place there, that was Phil Munday. So Phil Munday also going very well. But it's Matt Goldsmith that will head them across the line for the completion of the first mile. And all in line of stern action around Paddock Bend. 1 or 2 very wide lines there, but everybody keeping it on the island. Down the Canterbury Straight they head then. And Matt Goldsmith has got an excellent start and he's holding on well. It's still Paul Cundy in second. And Phil Bellinkin, no, that is not Phil Bellinkin, it's the same colour machine of course, but that is Chris Rogers on the 95 bike. And Phil Munday just slips underneath Paul Cundy as they go into the elbow, so I think Phil Munday will have moved ahead of Paul Cundy there as they just went out of camera shot, taking in the rest of the field. Oh, and getting it wrong there was the 94 bike of Ryan Anderson, and down he goes. It's pretty graceful. No damage to the machine, I wouldn't think. We see it again in slow motion, and wasn't rider number 20 there extremely lucky not to get caught? That's Steve Hill. Could easily have been taken out. But I'm sure Ryan Anderson will be back out later in the day. Not too much damage there, I wouldn't have thought. Back then with the race leaders. And Paul Cundy having to fight at the moment because Rogers was riding round the outside of him there on the way into Paddock Bend. So Chris Rogers has relegated Paul Cundy to 4th, but it's a very secure 4th now because the 5th man, it looks like Andy Bettridge, has got a bit of work to do to get onto terms rather with the man in 4th position. Just checking back, that's the 64 bike going through of Chris King, the man from Sutton. And still it's Matt Goldsmith, but Phil Munday closing in on him. Chris Rogers also trying hard. Paul Cundy just signs of losing touch there. And it's very competitive as ever with the MZs. They go around the left-hander again at Devil's Elbow. And Phil beginning to just spread itself out and sort itself out now. Camera pans up to look at the leading group coming down Perry Hill then and into Paddock Bend. It is the 4 machine of Matt Goldsmith that still holds that advantage that he took from the change of the lights. Gap back to number 8 Andy Bettridge, and then it's Matt Higgins behind him, and I think that was John Welfare next. Mark Casali very wide going out of Paddock there, but once again he did keep it on the black stuff. Should we say pink stuff here at Lydden? It's got a distinctive pink tinge to it, the circuit here. Might be well why the lady riders do so well at this track. Enough of the sexist remarks. Here we go then with Chris Rogers, and always pan back quickly because Paul Cundy has taken a tumble there at the elbow, and I don't think he's going to be able to get going again. He's picking up the machine. There's the 15 bike of Andy Moffat. A new seat for Andy, I notice, on that machine. It's a change of style there. And Chris Rogers now is chasing hard after Matt Goldsmith. Back again, there's Andy Bettridge. Oh, and a terrible accident there, and that was Matt Higgins. Well, he had no brakes, that was quite obvious because we just saw a blur whip through the screen. Here we see it in slow motion. Watch for the blur, there it goes, and we just about pick it up on shot, and you'll see that's extreme velocity with which both machine and rider hit that tyre wall. It's unprotected at that point because you don't expect people to hit the tyre wall there. So straight into unprotected tyres went the number 9 machine of Matt Higgins. And we're going to see a red flag here. This race not going to be able to continue. Higgins looks a bit groggy. The marshals come to his aid. And the machine, ironically, doesn't seem too badly damaged when you consider the impact. The marshals wheeling that out of the way. All there to protect them, but the race has been declared. And it's Matt Goldsmith that takes the win from Chris Rogers, Phil Bellenkin, John Welfare, Simon Snowden and Paul Emanuel. As you can see from the caption, this round held over from the June Pembrey meeting. The other problems during the year. The lights have changed then. It's a swift start here. We get away for the second race of our 8-race programme from Lydden. And it looks like Matt Goldsmith that's got the early break. We'll try and confirm that for you when we get a better idea of him. But we look at the rest of the pack, all making it safely through Chessons on this opening lap. And just confirmation of who the race leader is. It is number 4, and that is, of course, Matt Goldsmith. Well, 40 in second place, that looks like Simon Snowden. It is Simon Snowden. Well, a terrific result for Simon Snowden. Second place, can he sustain that during the course of this 10-lap race? Well, Matt Goldsmith up at North Bend hairpin then. And behind him still Simon Snowden. Chris Rogers, though, looking menacing in that third position. All action, Chris Rogers coming out of North Bend hairpin, really getting on the gas as early as he could. Matt Goldsmith is going to lead them at the end of the first mile. And Simon Snowden coming under pressure now from Matt Goldsmith. There's Paul Cundy. And there's a little gap back. And Martin Baldwin. It's surprising to see Martin Baldwin in such a lowly position. The man that seems to go on racing forever and ever. 60 years of age, Martin Baldwin. Started racing when virtually MZ started racing. That's how long he's been in the game. And still as quick as the best of them on his day. Well, Simon Snowden around the left-hander at Devil's Elbow. Super result this will be if he can live with these men. It's Phil Bellenkin that's behind him at the moment. Well, Phil Bellenkin sporting the same machine colours as Chris Rogers, the man that's a couple of places in front of him at the moment. But Matt Goldsmith riding very well. Won the King of the Zeds last year and looking pretty much on course to try and do the same this year. Looks like it might be Jonathan King in that 5th position there. We'll try and confirm that for you. I'm just going by the rearward ID of his leathers and seat on the machine, and that can be a dangerous method. But that could well be Jonathan King up there. Another good ride for Jonathan if that is him. A look across to the elbow and the pressure is on and Rogers goes underneath. Well, where did he come from? Chris Rogers, well, we looked at him before, he was in 3rd place. All of a sudden he's diving underneath Matt Goldsmith to take over the lead. But Matt Goldsmith is not going to relinquish this one lightly. Trying again on the outside line as they go up towards North Bend hairpin, but it's Chris Rogers. Well, Chris Rogers down the hill then. Likes this Lydden circuit, always does well here. So too does Matt Goldsmith, and these two always provide some nice close racing for us. And Phil Bellenkin in that 3rd place, Simon Snowden down to 4th, then John Welfare leads the rest of the chasing pack, and I think that still might be Jonathan King in behind John Welfare. There is Martin Baldwin. Ryan Addison, that looks like there. Took a tumble in the first race, but pleased to see he's back out again. 95, Chris Rogers, Matt Goldsmith, Phil Bellenkin. Phil Bellenkin looks as though he means business as well. Gavin Sherwood there, a quick outside line around the exit of the elbow. Gavin Sherwood, 50 years of age. And Gavin will be very pleased that he's able to race at all because he spent 5 years battling with cancer. And pleased to say he's made a full recovery, and there's the evidence of it, the way he's going in this race. Plenty of action further down the field as well. That 12 machine is Chris Scoggins, and he's involved in the battle. 11.81 are the machines ahead of him. That's Mark Dickinson on the 11 bike, and 81, well, he just paused for a moment there, 81, because that's not a rider immediately familiar to me. Simon Scoggins, of course. Simon Scoggins is the 81 rider. And Phil Bellenkin around the outside there. Well, that's a super manoeuvre from Phil Bellenkin. How did he do that? Particularly how did he do it to Matt Goldsmith? It's not many people can do it to anybody, let alone to Matt Goldsmith. And Phil Bellenkin has achieved the impossible, it seems. But Chris Rogers is getting away at the front. This is a big lead by MZ racing standards that Chris Rogers has. Goes up off the rider as he goes through paddock end. Doesn't use all the circuit. The two behind, in contrast, do. Still Simon Snowden going very well there. John Welfare under some pressure. There is Paul Cundy. Just taking in some more of the riders coming through. The 45 machine there. And that is Stephen Scoggins. A family of Scoggins out here in the MZ category. And Ryan Addison, a brief glimpse of him. So looking over then. And that's Jonathan King, 23. going very well, using a lot of tarmac coming out at the elbow. Chris Rogers holds the lead. Phil Belenkin, his teammate, is now up into second place. Well, Matt Goldsmith won't want to finish as low down the order by his standards as third. But at the moment, that's the position he's occupying, with 4 laps remaining in this one. There was Jonathan King. John Welfare close behind him, and Gavin Sherwood giving hot chase as well. That looked like Paul Emanuel. A solitary, lonely Paul Emanuel it was. Can't be using the right aftershave. Number 12 there is Chris Scoggins. And there, Ryan Anderson again. Very distinctive colour scheme for Ryan. But here are the leading battlers again. And Matt Goldsmith still hasn't given up on that second place. It's still in the hands, though, of Phil Belenkin. And then we look back, and Paul Cundy there ahead of the 65 machine. And 65 is Todd Brown. Well, Todd Brown it is that holds that advantage over Paul Cundy at the moment. Paul Cundy took a tumble in practice this morning, and I think also took a tumble in the race earlier. So if that is the case, then he'll be feeling pretty sore, I would think, and that might be why he isn't going as well as he was in the practice sessions earlier on in the day. 45 there, we've just got a glimpse of. That's Stephen Scoggins, and there is Ryan Anderson. And then 39, I think we spotted there, Mark Jones, Stephen's rider Mark Jones. Still they keep coming down, and Chris Rogers just going past the 16 machine of Dave Higgins. So Chris Rogers, our race leader, starts his penultimate lap this time. Well, it says 3 on the board, and I just forgot to change it, was my mathematics up the chute. It might well be. There is Phil Belenkin going around the Chessons Drift section. Phil Belenkin then onto the Dover slope, and there's the gap back to Matt Goldsmith, who finally wrestled that second place back from him. And then a check back to the 12 machine of Chris Scoggins. Chris riding in a very accomplished fashion indeed around paddock. That machine looks as though it's on rails going through there. Stephen Scoggins was behind him, and still they come through. It's the only way you get to ride in this particular race is to have entered at Pembrey. The last lap flag is out, so we were a bit tardy changing the board. We didn't get it right. It's changed, doesn't it? And there is John Welfare coming up to start his final mile now, and he's still got Gavin Sherwood for company. Close company indeed it is too. Might be Simon Snowden ahead of those two. There's Ryan Anderson. And the cross can still continue. Still they come through. That's the 30 machine we got a glimpse of there. That's Matthew Braw. And the 87 bike is about to, that's Paul Henson, about to be lapped by who is to become the race victor, Chris Rogers. So Chris Rogers then across the line to take the win. Goldsmith is going to be second. Chris Rogers, super ride from him. Just so that we try and get everybody in. 96 Andrew Thomas going through there. It's John Welfare is going to finish ahead of Gavin Sherwood in their battle. There's Paul Emanuel still taking them in. The 11 machine. That's Mark Dickinson. And there is Martin Baldwin. Well down the order for Martin. He's either got a machine problem or he's perhaps not feeling on top of his game this weekend. 45 there. That is Stephen Scoggins. 49 is Mark Jones. And Ryan Anderson goes through and taking the whole field on their final circuit. Confirmation of the victory then for Chris Rogers from Matt Goldsmith, Phil Belenkin, Jonathan King, John Welfare and Gavin Sherwood. Chris Rogers set the fastest lap. Well, the third race on our programme then is for the King of the Zeds, the first of the 10-lap qualifiers. The lights have changed then, and away we go for this one. Well, some different riders out here, because remember the round you've just seen was officially to be run at Pembrey, so only riders entering down there would have appeared in that one. This, though, is a strict entry for this weekend. Just trying to pick them out as they come down. That's a good lead. Look at that lead. And that is Matt Goldsmith. Matt Goldsmith got the super start. Phil Belenkin is behind him in second, and Jonathan King was third. Well, Jonathan King, we saw him go well in the previous race, and he's going equally well, if not better, in this one. Oh, there's a problem for one unlucky rider. That's the 85 machine with the exhaust trailing on the ground. That's Paul Benford. So the man from Longfield gets very little distance behind him in this one. But here's a man hoping to do so much better, and so far setting a blistering pace. It is Matt Goldsmith. Look at that lead. And that's Jonathan King behind him in second. Jonathan King up into second position. The rest of the pack all sorting themselves out on this opening lap. And there is the 96 machine at the rear. Andrew Thomas very much learning his trade. He'll get quicker. There's Matt Goldsmith at the left-hander. Monumental advantage here. I can't see Chris Rogers out in this one. I'm not sure where Chris is. Perhaps he got a bad start. There's Jonathan King. He got a super start. 24 machine leads 55. Well, 24, Tom Glanville leading the 55 bike of Aubrey Olden. Matt Goldsmith, though, is our race leader, bumping and boring his way through Paddock Bend. Still Jonathan King in that second position. Well, Martin Baldwin going a little bit better this time. With Ryan Anderson behind him, and then it's Mark Casali, the next rider through. Down the Canterbury Straight they head. And then checking back again for that 96 bike of Andrew Thomas. Number 8 is Andy Bettridge. Andy Bettridge not out in the previous race, but the Maidstone man going very well this time. And that's John Hart ahead of him on the 5 bike. It is John Hart. Well, we knew vigour for John Hart in this one. By his standards, he's had a bit of a mediocre season, but he's certainly going very well here. It's more like the old John Hart we're seeing. A race winner on his day. Looks like Phil Belenkin tucked in behind Andy Bettridge there. Take in some more. 91 going through, and that's Rob Howard from Lewis in West Sussex. And there the 20 machine, Frank Hercombe. No, Steve Hill, sorry. Apologies to Frank, that's Steve Hill. Apologies to Steve as well. Making their way up into the left-hander at Devil's Elbow. Mark Casali we spotted there. And there is the 39 machine, and that is of course Mark Jones. Of colour scheme for Mark. Looking back, and it seems like it's a never-ending flow of MZs coming through the corners here. There's the 73 bike, and that is indeed Frank Hercombe. I was mixing up the red leathers, you see, earlier on. That's my excuse. And there is Martin Baldwin around the Paddock Bend section of the course. That Goldsmith still sets the pace out in front. Look at that advantage he's got. Jonathan King still holding a good second. Phil Belenkin closing up in that third place though. Fourth place is Andy Bettridge, then it's John Hart. And then behind him it's the 45 machine of Stephen Scoggins. Well, Stephen's going well this time too. Oh, almost a coming together there between Mark Dickinson and Chris Scoggins. The two of them got very close on the Dover slope. You don't want that sort of intimacy in MZs. Up the hill they go. 39 is being slipstream, Mark Jones. Had a very good effect almost there, because he was nearly passed by Chris Scoggins, who had just fallen to line astern as they went into the corner. Quite a battle there. Looking back, and that will still go on. It's Steve Hill and Frank Hercombe still together, both trying to get past the 16 machine of Dave Higgins. That's the good thing about MZ racing. You can have a battle even if you're down near to the rear of the field, and it can be just as much fun as if you're battling for the lead. Dave Higgins then leading this trio at the moment. What's happening at the front? Well, there's the answer. It's Matt Goldsmith with Phil Belenkin now up into second place, but still giving chase to him is Jonathan King in that third position. Well, they go through Paddock Bend, and Jonathan King finding that everyone hasn't gone to the moon because they're all here giving chase to him. Fair advantage though for Jonathan for that third position at the moment. Nobody coming from fourth to put in any sort of a challenge. Mark Casali going through there. Ryan Anderson. Just a little look over the shoulder for Ryan, but we're back with our race leader, Matt Goldsmith, coming round the left-hander at Devil's Elbow and heading up Hairy Hill. Looking back to Andy Bettridge, who's in fourth. John Hart still company there, being kept by him in fifth. Andy Bettridge heading up the hill. Back we look again to the 71 machine. And that, of course, is Peter Lawrence. Mark Casali immediately ahead of Peter. And there again is the 39 bike of Mark Jones. Dickinson, I think, was the rider immediately in front of him. 55 going through. That's Aubrey Olden. And there, 92 is Chris Matthews. Running with the gearbox there and able to move up a position as he exited the Devil's Elbow. Race leader, meantime, is also coming through that section. It is, of course, Matt Goldsmith. Phil Belenkin still there in that second place and still third for Jonathan King. Martin Baldwin still is sustaining that improvement we saw in the earlier stages of this race, but still not perhaps quite on the pace as he would normally be. Well, Ryan Anderson doing battle here with 12 Chris Scoggins, and Chris Scoggins just has that advantage with an inside line at the Devil's Elbow. But Ryan Anderson getting on the gas, coming out. He's going to go around the outside of his rival. He does. Just a quick glance back at him as he goes up the hill and heads into North Ben Hairpin. Now trying to go around the outside this time, Chris Scoggins. So Ryan Anderson just holds him off, and it's the diminutive and the large here. Ryan Anderson looking dwarfed to his rival. Down the Canterbury Straight on their way. Meantime, we check back to look at some more battlers being encroached upon now almost by our race leader Matt Goldsmith, who comes down the hill. Racing 4 years, only 2 full seasons though for Matt Goldsmith, and it's quite remarkable that he can put in these sort of performances. And the last lap is with us already. This one has flown through. Frank Hercombe is still there involved in that little trio with Steve Hill. There's John Hart. And there Mark Casali. Used to race LCs, Mark Casali. That was a fairly cheap form of racing. And Matt Goldsmith then going up the hill. Just biding his time very sensibly there behind the back marker as he went up towards North Ben Hairpin. Through there he goes. And the back marker, of course, the 56 machine of Chris Shimon from Worcester Park. So Matt Goldsmith then, he's pleased about that. Takes the checkered flag. There's Phil Belenkin coming through. And Jonathan King, that's a super third for him. Andy Bettridge is going to claim fourth, I think. There is Martin Baldwin. Casali. 64 Chris King we got a glimpse of there, but we're looking at Mark Jones on the 39 machine. They're still coming. 55 there we spotted, and that's Aubrey Olden. Take a closer shot now of the 96 bike again. That's Andrew Thomas. So, first blood to Matt Goldsmith in the King of the Zeds qualifiers. Phil Belenkin second, Jonathan King third, then Andy Bettridge, Jonathan Hart and Martin Baldwin. Fastest lap to Matt Goldsmith. Another King of the Zeds qualifiers before us here then, and we should see Chris Rogers out in this one then. That was why he wasn't in the earlier one. He was seeded into the second of the qualifiers. Looking towards the lights then, and they change from red to blank, and away we go. I always want to say from red to green, but that's been discarded in recent times. Well, that looks like it could be Simon Snowden again with a cracking start there around Chessons Drift, and John Welfare is up in second place. That's the best start John's got all day so far. And just checking out, it's Chris Rogers in third, but it is Simon Snowden from John Welfare. They're the front two. Well, they're going very well indeed. Up towards North Bend hairpin. Simon Snowden still has it from John Welfare. And they come around the top of the corner. And Chris Rogers is there in that third position. And Simon Snowden sets the pace. Won the novice championship last year in 2004. John Welfare under pressure now from Chris Rogers, who was looking around the inside. And Ryan Anderson is going great guns this time too. Ryan is up there amongst the leading half dozen, so he's going superbly. Across then the battle is on, and John Welfare having to try very hard to fend off the challenge from Chris Rogers. He may just slide underneath at the left-hander here, Rogers, but John Welfare looking to try and keep the outside line of momentum going, but he has to give best in the end. So down the third goes John Welfare. Chris Rogers has moved up into second place, and how long before he's threatening Simon Snowden for that lead, but we can't overemphasise the quality of the ride from Simon Snowden here. Down the hill he comes. He's certainly put his year of novice racing into good use. He looks as though he's very much in control out there in the lead. Chris Rogers now posed right on his back seat. Signs of just how popular MZ racing has become with the packed grids here this weekend, and Chris Rogers has got to the front. Well, it was probably only going to be a matter of time, but he was held at bay for a couple of laps, and that was a no mean feat there from Simon Snowden. There is Andy Moffat on the 15 machine. A new seat for Andy, different shape to the one we're used to seeing on his machine. Just up ahead of him, it's Mark Jones on the 39 bike, and the 11 machine is Mark Dickinson. And just behind Andy Moffat, we have the 12 machine of Chris Scoggins. So Andy Moffat then, heading the machine into Paddock Bend. Switching across then to look at Chris Rogers, our race leader. Into the elbow, pulling away now from Simon Snowden in second. 65, Todd Brown is doing well in fourth. That's Gavin Sherwood behind him. Paul Emanuel just in front there we saw of Ryan Anderson. 81 there peeling off into the elbow. Pulls again. 81 Simon Scoggins, of course. There's the 30 machine looking to go round 87. Well, 87 Paul Henson is under pressure there from 30 Matthew Blore. There is Gavin Sherwood on the 50 bike. Brown, that is, just in front of Gavin Sherwood. Todd Brown going extremely well this time too. Gavin Sherwood closes up around Chessons. He's going to try and get that inside line maybe on the Dover slope for the elbow. He didn't need it. He swept around the outside on the exit of Chessons. The 17 Mark Casali trying to go through on the inside of Todd Brown, and he has, so Todd's lost a couple of places in rapid succession there. Shortly to be coming under more pressure from Paul Emanuel. He's actually got some company this time, so obviously a change of aftershave for Paul Emanuel, because he's actually surrounded by riders this time. 40, Simon Snowden, early leader, now going very well in second. Still John Welfare sticks with him. Gavin Sherwood is fourth, fifth is Mark Casali. Then it's Todd Brown, Paul Emanuel, and Ryan Anderson, I think, has borrowed a bottle of Paul Emanuel's aftershave, because he's on his own on the Canterbury Straight this time. Simon Scoggins then into a left-hander. John Welfare in pursuit. Chain working overtime now on that machine. One thing about MZ's, no fairings, so you can actually see exactly what's going on. John Welfare used his experience and has moved up in front of Simon Snowden now. This is certainly John's best ride of the weekend thus far. We've still got, well, this is only the 50% of races completed when this one's over, so only 4 to unfold. Oh, and we saw it earlier on the Dover slope, and these two are at it again. That's Mark Dickinson and Chris Scoggins, and they this time almost did the job properly. Surely there was a little bit of contact there, but not heavy enough to bring them both tumbling down the track, thankfully. 5 there, Aubrey Oldham. Well, Paul Emmanuel, there he is. He's up ahead of Gavin Sherwood. Held up for a moment behind Andrew Thomas. He goes for different lines around, and Todd Brown has come up to join them again, and Todd Brown in fact has managed to pass Gavin Sherwood, and that's often the problem when you approach back markers. If you just don't act quite decisively enough, or you pick the wrong option, then you get done. Chris Rogers way out in front. We haven't shown too much of Chris because it's a bit boring looking at someone circulating completely on his lonesome. And there is second place to John Welfare. And there's the gap back to Simon Snowden in third. Real hot contest here with Paul Emmanuel fending off Todd Brown. Todd Brown is trying the outside line, and Paul Emmanuel is messing about with the machine. His hand was reaching down, and he's not quite happy, perhaps with some gear selection problems or something down there, but while he was doing that, Todd Brown took the initiative and just passed Paul Emmanuel. Well, Paul Emmanuel with concentration back on focus again will now try and repass Todd Brown. A pair of them go down the Canterbury straight. At the elbow there now, race leader is Chris Rogers still. Towards North Bend Hairpin, and what a contest it's going to be when both Chris Rogers and Matt Goldsmith come together again later on tomorrow. Chris Rogers, you can see, looking very relaxed. Goes around the paddock bend section. Starts his last lap this time. Here comes John Welfare. Good ride from John Welfare as well. More coming down the hill there is Andy Moffat. He's giving chase to Ryan Anderson. And still they come through, and still those two doing battle. 11 and 12, Mark Dickinson and Chris Scoggins. And now for Chris Rogers on his final mile. And here he is. Around paddock for the final time. That's the checkered flag then for Chris Rogers. A very familiar sight for him. John Welfare. This is a super second place for John Welfare. He worked hard to pass Simon Snowden, but what a result for Simon Snowden. Mark Casale is closed right up in fourth. That's a super ride from him as well. There's Paul Emmanuel. That's his best ride of the weekend as well, with Todd Brown in his wake. And Ryan Anderson under pressure now from Andy Moffat, but Andy just thought about an inside line. He may have had visions of some 2 or 3 seasons ago when he was in his ear at Paddock Bend and probably thought the better of it. 81 goes through Paddock. And, a rather distinctive machine of Simon Scoggins there, 81. Still they come through. So a comfortable win for Chris Rogers from John Welfare, Simon Snowden, Mark Casale, sorry about the spelling, Gavin Sherwood and Paul Emmanuel. Fastest lap to Chris Rogers. On to race 5 then. This is the third King of the Zeds qualifier. Another 10 lapper before us here, and this time it brings together two quickest riders of the day. That's Chris Rogers and Matt Goldsmith. Looking then towards the lights to get this one underway. And the lights are red, they change. It's a smaller field this one, but it's a quality field. And away they go from the line. Looks like Matt Goldsmith is the man with the early break, and Phil Bellinkin, I think, is in second place behind him. Chris Rogers moves into third as I start to speak, ahead of Simon Snowden, who's in fourth, and Chris Welfare, I believe, John Welfare even, is in fifth place. Well, it's Matt Goldsmith, Phil Bellinkin, Chris Rogers, and John Welfare in fourth on the tight inside line into the elbow there. Up towards the front then, Matt Goldsmith it is, from Phil Bellinkin in second place. Around North Bend Hairpin. Chris Rogers in a good third. These three just breaking a little way clear from the chasers. But it is Matt Goldsmith. So often has he got the starts. And so often has he managed to stay there. Oh, and Phil Belenkin a little wide, to say the least, on the exit of paddock. It was all well controlled. He's been there before, I'm sure. But nevertheless, it's not something you want to be doing. It does slow your pace a little bit down the Canterbury Straight, because obviously you can't wind the throttle wide until you're back on terra firma. Well, Jonathan King trying to go around the outside of Andy Bettridge now. Those two right behind Simon Snowden. And Jonathan King trying the inside line on Andy Bettridge with Gavin Sherwood in behind those two. This is a hotly contested one, this. And Andy Bettridge on the outside of Jonathan King on the inside. They're very close together. And a little bit of... a little bit of psyching out going on there. Andy Bettridge staying his ground, and Jonathan King just allowing his machine to drift out a little bit close to Andy Bettridge's bike. Neither would give way, and credit to both riders, they didn't touch, they just stood their ground. Andy Bettridge then we stay with at paddock bend. Jonathan King right behind him, and Gavin Sherwood behind those two. They get back to Paul Emanuel. So we check across at the front, and it's still Matt Goldsmith. Matt Goldsmith, our race leader. Where is Chris Rogers? Has he made progress past Phil Belenkin? He has. He's up into second place. Phil Belenkin is third. A gap back to John Welfare and a good fourth. Then it's Simon Snowden. Andy Bettridge, though, trying the tight inside line as they went through the left-hander there. And another rider that was prominent as we look at Andy Moffat was the 71 bike of Peter Lawrence. He was well up. Looking across then. Matt Goldsmith coming down into paddock bend. Nice consistent lines from Goldsmith through there. Rogers in pursuit. There's John Welfare. And Martin Baldwin, and he was very wide on the exit. He just had to roll it off a little coming out of paddock bend. He's still not on song, Martin Baldwin. We know not what the reason for that is this weekend, but suffice it to say that Martin Baldwin is not his usual cracking form. Well, Simon Snowden and Jonathan King are in contest here. Jonathan King it is that peels off around the outside. He'll go into the left-hander. There's John Hart. Well, he had a good ride earlier. He's not going quite as well this time, but the competition is fierce in this one. We've got a very quality field out this time round. And the two men of the highest quality perhaps are out in front. It's Matt Goldsmith and Chris Rogers. These two invincible at Lydden. Rather fortunate though that we've got two such good riders that can at least make a race of it when they're both out there, because when either is not present then the other just clears off into the distance, but when they're both out there it's a good, close, clean contest. And it's Matt Goldsmith with the upper hand at the moment over Chris Rogers. They go round the left-hander at Devil's Elbow, but Chris Rogers might just be playing a waiting game there. A wily campaigner, Chris Rogers. He will know when to make his move, and he's decided, I think, it's not to be yet, because he's not just sitting there, and he looks very comfortable indeed. Matt Goldsmith just defending a little bit down the hill, just drifted towards the inside before moving out to take the corner at paddock bend when he realised that there was no challenge coming in. And then Phil Belenkin, a lonely third. There is John Welfare. He's enjoying his weekend. A good ride from him. Simon Snowden, equally good. Looking back, there's Andy Moffat. And through goes the 81 machine, and that is Simon Scoggins. Phil Belenkin in third, then a long gap. John Welfare is fourth, then Simon Snowden, Jonathan King, and then it's Gavin Sherwood and Paul Emanuel. As we look at the 71 machine of Peter Lawrence. This is quite a battle going on here. Half a dozen riders just swapping places, and Gavin Sherwood picked up for a moment there as he drifted round the outside at North Bend Hairpin, and there's Paul Emanuel on his inside, and now coming through on the inside is Peter Lawrence, and Peter Lawrence is going to take them all. It's Peter Lawrence moves to the front of this battle as they go into paddock bend. Peter Lawrence then from Paul Emanuel. Meanwhile, up at the front, it's getting closer. Chris Rogers has now moved right on the tail of Matt Goldsmith. He just thought about trying through on the inside there, but was content just to show the wheel and get back into line astern. But the challenge is surely going to come in soon from Chris Rogers in second place. Matt Goldsmith, though, not a rider easily unnerved by the presence of another. He might not be that experienced, but he rides as if he's been around the scene for decades. Into the right-hander at paddock he goes, with Chris Rogers still there, right behind him. And this is the most frenetic contest in the race. We're looking at Andy Bettridge, who's in the thick of battle here. Around paddock he goes. Paul Emanuel is behind him, then Gavin Sherwin, and a gap back to Martin Baldwin. Checking back further, and we find Andy Moffat. Distinctive colour scheme, Andy Moffat, both leathers and machine. And that machine in the handling department looks rather better. I don't know whether Andy's been working on it, but it's looked a bit snaky sometimes at Paddock Bend, but it really looks really very stable indeed going around there today. And indeed yesterday. Well, down the hill they come. Here is Matt Goldsmith, our race leader. Just a couple of laps remaining. In fact, the board changes a little slow. There is John Welfare. Simon Snowden gives chase to him. It's Andy Bettridge, and then Peter Lawrence, and then it was Paul Emanuel. Well, Chris Rogers comes out of the Devil's Elbow. Goldsmith still leads. This the penultimate lap. You should see the last lap indication, although the change in the board was a little confusing and perhaps a little premature this time. Down the hill they come. We'll just check out when they cross the line whether in fact they are about to start their final lap. My calculations would suggest they do. Yes, there is the last lap flag. So on the final circuit now, and one of these two is going to take the victory. There's no doubt about that. But which one is in considerable doubt, because they're both flying around Chessons now, and Chris Rogers looked pretty determined to me. The question is, can Matt Goldsmith supply the answers to the questions being asked by Chris Rogers, who looks up the inside now as they break for the left-hander? No, Chris Rogers forces his way through on the inside. I don't think Matt Goldsmith looked ready for that manoeuvre. He maybe would have been expecting it perhaps at North Bend Hairpin, and Chris Rogers surprised him by attacking at the left-hander at Devil's Elbow. He didn't seem prepared, Matt Goldsmith. It seemed all too easy for Chris Rogers to go through, and I think now he's got there, he's just got enough of a margin to hold on. And Chris Rogers is going to take a well-timed and well-planned victory here. It's going to be Chris Rogers from Matt Goldsmith then. The two arch rivals finish close together once more. And then Phil Bellingham going to finish in a very solitary third position. John Welfare coming through into fourth. Good ride again from John. Simon Snowden very wide there. He's just going to hang on though. Not to be passed by Andy Bettridge on that sprint to the line. There is Jonathan King. Next through John Hart, I think that was. Checking back, and down the hill comes Andy Moffat. So Andy Moffat around Paddock Bend then to complete his distance.
And Paul Emanuel finishing in 8th place again, starting right at the back of the grid. Another good ride.
At the end of the day, and the win then for Chris Rogers from Matt Goldsmith, Phil Bellingham, John Welfare, Simon Snowden and Andy Bettridge. Fastest lap to Chris Rogers. Well, race 6 is the first of the qualifying, first of the riders who did qualify for the King of the Zeds. This is the final, the first leg of the final. There are two of those, and then we get a non-qualifiers race later on. So two cracking races set before us now. You're looking at the lights, they are red. Out they go, and away go the riders from the line. It's all the top runners here that will contest this and the race to follow. Well, Matt Goldsmith sets off on that great start of his with John Welfare, I think, behind him in second place, away from the line. The sun's still shining here at Lydden. It's been very good weather-wise. Late in the season it can be a little indifferent, but it's Matt Goldsmith from John Welfare, and that's Chris Rogers, I think, in third. But Simon Snowden underneath him at the elbow, so Simon Snowden not going to make it easy for Chris Rogers in this one. Well, it's really going to be an enthralling contest between Matt Goldsmith and Chris Rogers to see which of those two can wrestle the King of the Zeds victory here in the two legs. Down the hill comes John Welfare, who's got the lead. Well, how did he do that? John Welfare has moved to the front. Well, can he believe it himself? He might have to pinch himself here, John Welfare, because he's out in front. The challenge coming in from Matt Goldsmith, though, as they reach the end of the straight. He may have the inside line. We're just looking forward to the front, and yes, Matt Goldsmith just slips underneath John Welfare, who had the temerity to pass the number 4 bike. Well, Great ride again from John Welfare. He's ridden well all weekend, but what he's been able to do is improve with every race, and that's what you want to be doing. Andy Bettridge also well placed. Phil Belenkin not so good this time, but plenty of time for him to move through the field, because this a 12-lap race, as indeed is the other point scorer for the King of the Zets. Ryan Anderson in dispute there with Steve Hills. They went around the left-hander, and there is the 91 machine of Rob Howard. It's Matt Goldsmith. Reassumed that number 1 position. Chris Rogers, though, still there in third. He hasn't managed to get past John Welfare. Great riding from John Welfare. And he can be doing Matt Goldsmith a bit of a favour here if he could just keep Chris Rogers at bay for a little longer, because although it's a 12-lapper, the more laps that unfold, the more difficult the task for Chris Rogers to close the distance down between himself and fast-starting Matt Goldsmith. Well, John Welfare's still there as they go round the left-hander. This is quite a battle too. We're looking at Andy Bettridge on the 8 bike. Just in front of Andy is Phil Belenkin, and behind him is Simon Snowden. Well, Phil Belenkin, he's had a good weekend. He's been consistent. And Chris Rogers now comes in with the challenge on John Welfare. Looks for the inside line and does it on the brakes going into Paddock Bend. So it is Chris Rogers who moves up into second place, and Phil Belenkin now trying to emulate that move. Looking on the inside line at the end of the straight. There's the 45 machine of Stephen Scoggins. Through goes the 12 of Chris Scoggins. And then 55 Aubrey Olden. John Welfare down to 4th now after that exhilarating start that he got, but he'll still be pretty happy with how he's going in this one. Paul Emanuel is ahead of Todd Brown. And then 39, that's Mark Jones. Oh, he got it a bit wrong there, Mark Jones. He's looking down at the machine. Has he got a problem, I wonder? Seemed to lose drive and momentum going through the corner. No such signs of that for Matt Goldsmith, though. Chris Rogers, though, has got into that second position. Phil Belenkin is taken third, so the battle is on at the front. Paul Emanuel there goes through ahead of the 40.